The HOA president stood up and screamed during my daughter's graduation speech. She called my grieving child a troublemaker in front of hundreds of people. She demanded the ceremony stop immediately. She had no idea who I really was or what power I held. Big mistake. Huge mistake. She would regret this. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. The morning sun filtered through my kitchen window as I watched my daughter Emma tie her graduation gown. My hands trembled slightly as I held my coffee cup. This was supposed to be the happiest day of our lives, but the knot in my stomach told me something different. Emma had worked so hard for this moment. After her father died 3 years ago, she became my entire world. At 17, she had already faced more pain than most adults. She maintained straight A's while watching her father fade away from cancer. She held my hand at his funeral. She comforted me when I cried at night. Today was her graduation day. She earned the valedictorian spot through blood, sweat, and tears. This morning should have been filled with joy, but I could see the anxiety in her eyes. "Mom, do you think she'll be there?" Emma asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. I knew exactly who she meant. Patricia Henderson. Our HOA president. The woman who had made our lives miserable for the past 6 months. "Don't worry about her, sweetheart," I said, pulling Emma into a tight hug. "This is your day. Nothing will ruin it." But even as I spoke those words, I wasn't sure I believed them. 6 months ago, Patricia Henderson moved into our neighborhood. She immediately ran for HOA president and won by default because nobody else wanted the position. That was our first mistake, letting her take control without opposition. Within weeks, she transformed from a pleasant neighbor into a tyrant. She measured everyone's grass with a ruler. She complained about Christmas lights being half an inch too low. She sent violation notices for trash cans being visible from the street for more than 2 hours on collection day. But her real target was Emma. It started small. Patricia complained that Emma's bicycle was parked in our driveway instead of in the garage. Then she said Emma's wind chimes were too noisy. Then she claimed Emma played her music too loud, even though Emma only listened with headphones. The breaking point came 2 months ago. Emma had organized a bake sale in our driveway to raise money for cancer research in her father's memory. 20 kids from school came to support her. They laughed, they shared stories about Emma's dad, and they raised $800 for charity. Patricia called the police. She claimed we were running an illegal business without a permit. She said the children were trespassing. She threatened to fine us $5,000 for violating HOA regulations about commercial activities. I watched my daughter's face crumble as police officers questioned her about the bake sale. I saw her shoulders shake as she tried to explain it was for charity. I felt my heart break as she apologized to her friends and sent them home. That night, Emma cried herself to sleep. I held her and promised that things would get better. But Patricia wasn't finished with us. She started a campaign of harassment. She would stand at the end of our driveway with her phone, filming Emma whenever she came home from school. She sent daily violation notices for imaginary infractions. She told other neighbors that Emma was a troublemaker who didn't respect community rules. My daughter, who had maintained perfect grades while dealing with grief, who volunteered at the hospital every weekend, who helped elderly neighbors with their groceries, was being painted as a delinquent. Emma became afraid to leave the house. She stopped riding her bike. She stopped inviting friends over. She asked if we could move, even though this was the home where her father's memory lived in every corner. I reported Patricia to the HOA board, but she controlled them completely. I contacted lawyers, but they said HOA disputes were complicated and expensive. I felt helpless watching my daughter suffer. What Patricia didn't know was that I had another role in this community. For the past 5 years, I had served as a trustee on the school board. I kept this position quiet because I didn't want Emma to feel pressured or for other parents to treat her differently. Only the principal and superintendent knew about my connection to Emma. As a trustee, I had voting power on school policies, budget decisions, and event planning. I had access to school facilities and influence over community programs. But I never mixed my personal life with my board duties. Until now. Emma and I arrived at the school auditorium 2 hours before the ceremony. As valedictorian, she needed to do final rehearsals and coordinate with other speakers. I helped her carry her speech notes and her father's photo, which she wanted to keep with her during her address. "I wish Dad could see this," Emma whispered as we walked through the parking lot. "He can, sweetheart," I said, squeezing her hand. "He's so proud of you." "I know he is." The morning rehearsal went perfectly. Emma practiced her speech 3 times. The principal, Mrs. Rodriguez, hugged her and told her it was the most moving valedictorian address she had heard in 30 years. But as families started arriving for the ceremony, I saw Patricia's silver Mercedes pull into the parking lot. My stomach dropped. "Why is she here?" Emma asked, panic creeping into her voice. "She doesn't have any kids in this school." Patricia emerged from her car wearing an expensive suit and carrying a clipboard. She marched toward the entrance like she owned the place. I should have known. Patricia had a talent for inserting herself into situations where she didn't belong. She claimed to represent the HOA at community events, even when nobody invited her. "Stay calm," I told Emma. "She can't do anything here. This is school property." Emma nodded, but I could see her hands shaking. 3 years of grief, 6 months of harassment, and now Patricia was threatening to ruin the one day that was supposed to be Emma's triumph. We went inside to the backstage area where graduates were lining up. Emma stood with her classmates, trying to smile and celebrate with them. But I noticed she kept glancing toward the auditorium entrance, watching for Patricia. I took my seat in the reserved section for families of honor students. From there, I could see Patricia in the back row, her clipboard on her lap, her eyes scanning the room like a predator looking for prey. The ceremony began. The school band played. The principal gave opening remarks. Students received their diplomas in alphabetical order. I watched Emma wait in line, her posture perfect, her smile brave. Then came the moment we had been waiting for. The principal called Emma to the podium to deliver her valedictorian speech. Emma walked across the stage with grace. She adjusted the microphone. She looked out at the audience of proud parents, excited students, and supportive teachers. She took a deep breath. "Thank you all for being here today," Emma began, her voice steady and clear. 3 years ago, I stood beside my father's hospital bed and promised him that I would make him proud. Today, I want to honor that promise. The auditorium fell silent. You could hear the emotion in Emma's voice as she spoke about loss, resilience, and hope. She talked about how her classmates supported her through grief. She thanked her teachers for their patience. She spoke about dreams and futures and making the world better. Tears rolled down my cheeks. Every parent in the room was crying. Even the tough football coaches were wiping their eyes. Emma was magnificent. Then Patricia stood up. "Excuse me." Patricia's voice cut through the auditorium like a knife. "Excuse me. This is inappropriate." Emma froze at the podium. The microphone picked up her sharp intake of breath. Every head in the auditorium turned to look at Patricia. "This speech is too long," Patricia shouted, waving her clipboard. "School events must follow proper time schedules. This is disrespectful to everyone's time." Murmurs of confusion rippled through the crowd. The principal stood up from her seat on stage, her face shocked. Security guards started moving toward Patricia. But Patricia wasn't finished. Furthermore, she continued, her voice dripping with false authority, "This student has a history of violating community regulations. She should not be representing this school in any capacity. I demand that she conclude her remarks immediately. The auditorium exploded with angry voices. Parents shouted at Patricia to sit down. Students booed. Teachers looked horrified. But all I could see was Emma. My daughter stood at that podium with tears streaming down her face. Her hands gripped the edges of the stand so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. She looked at me with devastation in her eyes. This was supposed to be her moment. After everything she had been through, after all the pain and hard work and sacrifice, this was supposed to be the day she felt proud. The day she felt her father's presence. The day she knew that good things still existed in the world. And Patricia was destroying it. Something inside me snapped. I stood up from my seat. I walked down the aisle with measured steps. I could feel every eye in the auditorium following me. Patricia smirked when she saw me approaching, probably thinking I was coming to argue with her. She had no idea what was coming. I walked past Patricia without acknowledging her. I climbed the stairs to the stage. I walked to the podium where my daughter stood frozen in shock. I gently took the microphone from the stand. "My name is Jennifer Martinez," I said, my voice calm but carrying to every corner of the auditorium. "Some of you know me as Emma's mother. But what you may not know is that I also serve as a trustee on this school board." Patricia's face went pale. I saw her sink back into her seat. "I have served in this position for 5 years," I continued. "In that time, I have watched thousands of students walk across this stage. I have heard hundreds of speeches. But I have never been more proud than I am right now, watching my daughter demonstrate grace under pressure." I turned to look at Emma. Her eyes were wide with surprise. "Emma has faced unimaginable challenges," I said. "She lost her father at 14. She maintained perfect grades while dealing with grief. She volunteers at the hospital where her father died because she wants to help other families going through similar pain. She organized a charity bake sale that raised money for cancer research. She is kind, compassionate, and resilient." My voice grew stronger. "For the past 6 months, Emma has also been the target of systematic harassment by someone who should have known better. Someone who used her position of power to bully a grieving teenager. Someone who has made my daughter afraid in her own home." Patricia tried to stand up, but other parents pushed her back down into her seat. "As a school board trustee," I said, "I have certain authorities and responsibilities. One of those responsibilities is maintaining the safety and dignity of our students, both on school grounds and in the community." I looked directly at Patricia. "Ms. Henderson, you are hereby banned from all school property and school-sponsored events, effective immediately. Security will escort you from the premises. If you return, you will be arrested for trespassing." Security guards were already moving toward Patricia. She sputtered protests, but nobody listened. "Additionally," I continued, "I will be filing formal complaints with the HOA management company about your harassment of my family. I will be pursuing legal action for emotional distress. And I will be using every resource available to me as a school trustee to ensure that no other child in this community suffers the way my daughter has suffered." The auditorium erupted in applause. Parents stood up, clapping and cheering. Students stomped their feet. Teachers whistled. Patricia was dragged from the room by security, her face red with humiliation and rage. Her clipboard fell to the floor, and nobody picked it up. I handed the microphone back to Emma. My daughter looked at me with tears in her eyes, but this time they were tears of relief and love. "Finish your speech, sweetheart," I whispered. "Make your father proud." Emma wiped her eyes. She straightened her shoulders. She looked out at the supportive crowd and smiled. "As I was saying," Emma said into the microphone, her voice strong and clear, "we graduate today not just with diplomas, but with the knowledge that standing up for what's right matters. That protecting each other matters. That love is stronger than hate. The applause that followed shook the building. After the ceremony, Emma was surrounded by classmates, teachers, and parents offering hugs and congratulations. Mrs. Rodriguez pulled me aside. "I had no idea you were dealing with that situation at home," she said, concern in her eyes. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't want Emma to feel like she needed special treatment," I admitted. "I wanted her to succeed on her own merits. But I should have acted sooner. I should have protected her better." Mrs. Rodriguez shook her head. "You protected her perfectly today. You showed her that sometimes we have to use our power to defend the people we love. That's an important lesson." Over the next few days, the story of what happened at graduation spread through the community. Local news picked it up. Social media exploded with support for Emma and condemnation of Patricia. The HOA management company launched an investigation into Patricia's conduct. They interviewed dozens of homeowners who came forward with their own stories of Patricia's harassment and abuse of power. Many families had been too afraid to speak up before, but Emma's situation gave them courage. 2 weeks after graduation, Patricia Henderson was removed as HOA president. The management company terminated her position and banned her from holding any leadership role in the future. Several homeowners filed lawsuits against her for harassment and defamation. Patricia tried to fight back, but she had no support. Her friends in the neighborhood abandoned her. Her reputation was destroyed. She put her house up for sale within a month. But the real victory came from Emma. My daughter, who had been afraid to leave her own home, started sleeping peacefully again. She laughed with her friends. She rode her bike through the neighborhood without looking over her shoulder. She organized another charity bake sale, and this time the entire community showed up to support her. On the last day before Emma left for college, we sat together in our living room, surrounded by boxes and memories. "Mom," Emma said quietly, "thank you for what you did at graduation." "You don't need to thank me, sweetheart," I replied. "I should have done it sooner. I should have stopped Patricia months ago." Emma shook her head. "No, you did it at the perfect time. You showed me that using power responsibly means knowing when to act. You taught me that standing up for what's right isn't always easy, but it's always necessary." She picked up her father's photo from the coffee table. "Dad would be proud of both of us." "He would be," I agreed, my voice thick with emotion. "He loved watching you stand up for others. He always said you had the strongest heart of anyone he knew." Emma smiled through her tears. "I learned it from both of you." Emma thrived at college. She joined organizations dedicated to supporting students dealing with grief. She started a campus chapter of a charity supporting cancer research. She called me every week with stories of new friends, challenging classes, and exciting opportunities. Back in our neighborhood, the HOA elected new leadership. They revised the rules to prevent the kind of abuse Patricia had inflicted. They created an appeals process for violations. They established clear guidelines about harassment. Our community became stronger because of what happened. People looked out for each other more. They stood up when they saw injustice. They remembered that rules should serve people, not control them. I continued my work as a school trustee with renewed purpose. I advocated for policies protecting students from bullying, both in school and in the community. I pushed for mental health resources for grieving families. I made sure that no other child would suffer in silence the way Emma had. Patricia Henderson eventually moved to another state. I heard through neighbors that she tried to become an HOA president in her new community, but word of her past behavior followed her. Nobody would give her power again. I didn't take pleasure in her downfall. I took satisfaction in knowing that bullies face consequences. That speaking up matters. That protecting our children is worth any cost. On the anniversary of Emma's graduation, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Emma, though I talked to her regularly, so a written letter was unusual. I opened it carefully and read. "Dear Mom. A year ago today, you stood up for me in front of hundreds of people. You used your position, your voice, and your power to protect me from someone who wanted to hurt me. You showed me what real strength looks like. I want you to know that the lessons from that day have shaped everything I do now. When I see someone being bullied on campus, I speak up. When I see injustice, I act. When I see people abusing power, I stand against them. You taught me that having power or authority isn't about controlling others. It's about protecting those who can't protect themselves. It's about using privilege responsibly. It's about making sure that the vulnerable are heard and valued. Dad always said you were the strongest person he knew. Now I understand why. I'm graduating college in 3 more years. I want to go to law school and specialize in advocating for families dealing with HOA disputes and harassment. I want to be the lawyer we needed a year ago. I want to protect other kids like me. Thank you for showing me how to turn pain into purpose. Thank you for teaching me that standing up for what's right is always worth it. Thank you for being my hero. I love you more than words can say. Emma. I read that letter 3 times, crying harder each time. Emma had taken the worst experience of her young life and transformed it into a calling. She was going to spend her career protecting others from what she endured. My daughter, the girl who had been bullied and harassed, was going to become a warrior for justice. Her father would have been so proud. I was so proud. People often ask me if I regret waiting so long to use my position as a school trustee to confront Patricia. They wonder why I didn't act sooner, why I let Emma suffer for 6 months before stepping in. The truth is complicated. Part of me wanted Emma to develop resilience, to learn how to handle difficult people, to understand that life isn't always fair. I thought I was teaching her to be strong. But I learned something important that day at graduation. There's a difference between teaching resilience and allowing abuse. There's a difference between letting children face challenges and letting them be tormented. Yes, children need to learn how to handle difficulties. Yes, they need to develop thick skin and problem-solving skills. But they also need to know that when situations become unbearable, when bullies cross lines, when harassment becomes dangerous to their mental health, the adults in their lives will step in and protect them. Emma didn't need to endure 6 months of Patricia's harassment to build character. She had already shown more character than most adults ever will by maintaining her grades, her kindness, and her compassion while dealing with her father's death. What Emma needed was for me to show her that authority should be used to protect the vulnerable. That power is a responsibility, not just a privilege. That sometimes the most important thing we can do is stand up and say, enough. The story of Emma's graduation spread far beyond our small community. I received emails from parents across the country sharing their own experiences with HOA bullies, school harassment, and feeling powerless to protect their children. Many of those parents told me that Emma's story gave them courage to act. They filed complaints against abusive HOA board members. They stood up to school bullies. They used their voices and their power to protect their families. One mother from Texas wrote, "My daughter was being harassed by our HOA president for hosting a Girl Scout meeting in our garage. After reading about what you did, I filed a formal complaint and organized other parents. The president was removed. Thank you for showing us that we don't have to accept abuse." A father from Ohio wrote, "My son is on the autism spectrum. Our HOA tried to fine us because his behavior in our backyard was disruptive. I was ready to just pay the fines and move. But your story made me realize that standing up to bullies is how we protect our kids. I fought back. We won." These letters kept coming, dozens of them, then hundreds. Each one represented a family who found courage to protect their children. Each one represented a bully who faced consequences. Emma's moment of pain had created ripples of positive change across the country. 4 years later, I sat in another auditorium for another graduation. This time, Emma was graduating from college with honors in political science. She had already been accepted to 3 law schools with full scholarships. This ceremony was different from her high school graduation. There was no drama, no confrontation, no Patricia Henderson disrupting the peace. It was joyful and celebratory, exactly what a graduation should be. But when Emma walked across the stage to receive her diploma, the dean made a special announcement. Emma Martinez has been selected to receive the Chancellor's Award for Student Advocacy, the dean said. During her time at our university, Emma has been a tireless advocate for students dealing with grief and loss. She founded our campus support group for bereaved students. She organized fundraisers that raised over $50,000 for cancer research. She worked with local government to pass ordinances protecting residents from HOA harassment and abuse. Emma accepted the award with grace and humility. She gave a brief speech thanking her professors, her friends, and her support system. Then she looked directly at me in the audience. Most importantly, Emma said, "I want to thank my mother, who taught me that power is meaningless unless we use it to protect those who need protection. Who showed me that standing up to bullies is always the right choice, even when it's difficult. Who demonstrated that love is the strongest force in the universe." I cried. Not tears of pain this time, but tears of overwhelming pride. My daughter had taken her trauma and transformed it into a mission. She had turned her pain into purpose. She had become exactly the kind of person the world needs more of. 2 months after Emma's college graduation, I received an unexpected email. It was from Patricia Henderson. I almost deleted it without reading, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened the message. "Jennifer. I'm sure you're surprised to hear from me. I don't blame you if you delete this without reading. I want you to know that I've spent the past 4 years in therapy working on my behavior. My therapist helped me understand that I was using control and power to cope with my own pain and insecurity. That doesn't excuse what I did to Emma, to you, or to the other families in our neighborhood. I was wrong. Completely, inexcusably wrong. I saw a news article about Emma's graduation and her Chancellor's Award. I saw that she's going to law school to advocate for families dealing with HOA harassment. I realized that my actions 4 years ago created pain that Emma transformed into purpose. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I understand now what I did. I understand that I terrorized a grieving teenager because I was miserable in my own life. I understand that I abused power that should have been used to serve the community. If it means anything, I want you to know that I'm genuinely sorry. I'm working on being a better person. I no longer seek positions of power. I volunteer at organizations that help abuse survivors. I'm trying to make amends for the harm I caused. I don't expect a response. I just wanted you to know that you and Emma were right to stand up to me. You were right to use your power to protect her. You taught me a lesson I desperately needed to learn. I hope Emma succeeds in her law career. I hope she helps many families who face situations like what I put you through. And I hope someday she knows that what happened to her created positive change in at least one person's life, even if that person is the one who hurt her. Patricia." I read the email twice. I felt complicated emotions, anger at what Patricia had done, satisfaction that she finally understood her mistakes, skepticism about whether her change was genuine. I showed the email to Emma during our next phone call. "What do you think, Mom?" Emma asked. "Do you believe her?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Maybe she really did change. Maybe this is just more manipulation. Either way, it doesn't change what happened. It doesn't erase the pain she caused." Emma was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that showed me just how wise my daughter had become. "You know what, Mom? Whether Patricia really changed or not doesn't matter. What matters is that we didn't let her actions destroy us. We took her worst behavior and turned it into motivation to do good in the world. Her attempt to hurt us ended up making us stronger. My daughter was right. Patricia's harassment had caused pain, but it had also ignited Emma's passion for justice. It had shown both of us the importance of using power responsibly. It had taught us that standing up to bullies is always worth it. Are you going to respond to her email? Emma asked. No, I said. There's nothing I need to say to Patricia. The best response is continuing to live our lives with purpose and integrity. That's how we win. 3 years into law school, Emma took on her first real case through a legal clinic. It involved a family being harassed by their HOA president for having a rainbow flag in their yard. The parallels to our situation were striking. The HOA president was using violation notices and harassment to bully a family because of personal prejudice. The family's teenage daughter was suffering, afraid to be herself in her own home. Emma threw herself into the case with passion and skill. She researched precedents. She interviewed the family and gathered evidence. She filed complaints with the HOA management company and prepared legal action if necessary. I watched her work, and I saw echoes of that day at her high school graduation. But this time, Emma wasn't the victim. She was the protector. She was using her knowledge and her power to defend someone else's child. Emma won the case. The HOA president was removed. The family's right to display their flag was protected. The teenage daughter sent Emma a thank you card that said, "You saved my life. Thank you for showing me that people with power can use it to help instead of hurt." When Emma showed me that card, I saw tears in her eyes. "This is what I'm meant to do, Mom," she said. "This is why everything happened the way it did. So I could be here for other kids who need someone to stand up for them." 5 years after that eventful graduation, Emma passed the bar exam and opened her own law practice specializing in HOA disputes and harassment cases. She offers sliding scale fees so that families who can't afford expensive lawyers can still get quality representation. Her practice thrives. She wins case after case, protecting families from abusive HOA boards. She advocates for legislative changes to prevent HOA overreach. She speaks at conferences about responsible use of power in community organizations. Local news calls her the HOA defender. National advocacy groups seek her expertise. Law schools invite her to speak to students about using legal skills to protect vulnerable populations. But Emma stays humble. She remembers where she came from. She remembers standing at that podium at 17, devastated by Patricia's attack, saved by her mother's intervention. Last week, Emma called me with exciting news. "Mom, I've been invited to speak at the National School Board Association conference," she said, her voice bursting with excitement. "They want me to talk about how school trustees can use their positions to protect students from community harassment." "That's wonderful, sweetheart," I said. "What will you talk about?" "I'm going to tell our story," Emma replied. "I'm going to explain how you showed me that authority is a responsibility. How you demonstrated that sometimes the most important thing powerful people can do is stand up to bullies. How you changed my life by using your position as a school trustee to protect me." My eyes filled with tears. "Emma, you don't have to share our painful story if it's difficult for you." "Mom," Emma said gently, "it stopped being just our painful story years ago. It became a story about justice and standing up for what's right. It became a story that helps other people. That's worth sharing." She was right, as usual. Today, Emma's law practice helps dozens of families every year. She's instrumental in passing legislation protecting homeowners from HOA abuse. She trains school board members on protecting students from community harassment. I continue serving as a school trustee, using my position to advocate for vulnerable students. Emma and I sometimes collaborate on cases where school and community issues overlap. Our neighborhood HOA is now a model of responsible community management. They named their code of conduct the Emma Martinez Standard, in honor of my daughter's courage and grace under pressure. Patricia Henderson's name is remembered in our community too, but as a cautionary tale. When new HOA board members take office, they're told the story of what happens when power is abused. They learn from Patricia's mistakes. But the real legacy is in the hundreds of families who have been helped because Emma transformed her pain into purpose. Every child who sleeps safely because an abusive HOA president was removed. Every teenager who stands proud because someone advocated for their rights. Every family who keeps their home because Emma fought for them. That's the ripple effect of standing up to bullies. That's the power of using authority responsibly. That's what happens when we protect the vulnerable instead of preying on them. If I could go back to that day 6 years ago when Patricia Henderson first started harassing Emma, would I do anything differently? Maybe I would act sooner. Maybe I would use my position as school trustee to protect Emma from months of harassment instead of waiting until graduation day. But I've learned that sometimes the lessons we need to learn only come through difficulty. Sometimes the person we're meant to become only emerges through struggle. Emma needed to experience injustice to understand why fighting injustice matters. She needed to feel powerless to understand why protecting the powerless is so important. She needed to be a victim to become a defender. And I needed to watch my daughter suffer to understand that sometimes being a good parent means stepping in, using every resource available, and saying, no more. Patricia Henderson taught us both important lessons, even if she never intended to. She showed us what abuse of power looks like. She demonstrated why we need people willing to stand up to bullies. She gave Emma a mission that shapes everything my daughter does. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most end up giving us our greatest purpose. This morning, I received a letter from Emma. She's now 23, successful, happy, and making a real difference in the world. Dear Mom, the letter began. I'm writing this from my office. On my wall, I have 3 photos, Dad at the hospital, you standing up at my graduation, and the teenager whose family I helped last week. These photos remind me every day why I do what I do. Dad taught me compassion. You taught me courage. That teenager reminds me why compassion and courage matter. People ask me all the time if I'm angry about what Patricia did to us. They want me to carry hatred and resentment. But I don't. What Patricia did was wrong. She should have been stopped sooner. She caused real harm to real people. But her actions also set me on a path to helping others. Her harassment gave me purpose. Her cruelty taught me the importance of kindness. I'm not grateful for the pain she caused. But I'm grateful for what I did with that pain. Thank you, Mom, for showing me how to stand up. Thank you for teaching me that power is a responsibility. Thank you for demonstrating that protecting the vulnerable is always worth it. I hope when I'm a mother someday, I'll have even half the courage you showed that day. I love you always. Emma. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in a box where I keep my most precious memories. Next to Emma's valedictorian speech. Next to the newspaper clipping about Patricia's removal as HOA president. Next to the photo of Emma receiving her Chancellor's Award. These aren't just memories of painful times. They're reminders of how we survived those times. How we took hurt and transformed it into healing. How we used our power to protect instead of harm. That's the real lesson of what happened 6 years ago at Emma's graduation. Not that bullies get punished, though Patricia certainly did. Not that standing up to harassment works, though it absolutely does. The real lesson is simpler and more profound. When we stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult, even when we're scared, even when we waited too long to act, we create ripples of positive change that extend far beyond ourselves. We teach our children courage. We inspire others to be brave. We make the world a little bit better. And sometimes, that's exactly what graduation day is supposed to be about, not just ending one chapter, but beginning the chapter where we become who we're truly meant to be. Emma became a protector of the vulnerable. I became a mother willing to use her power when it mattered most. And together, we showed that love is always stronger than hate. That's a lesson worth learning, no matter how painful the teaching. That's a story worth telling, no matter how difficult the truth. And that's a legacy worth leaving, no matter what it costs. Because at the end of the day, the measure of our lives isn't what we accomplished for ourselves, It's what we did to protect those who needed protection. It's how we used our power, our voice, and our courage to make the world safer for the vulnerable. Emma learned that lesson at 17, standing at a podium while a bully tried to destroy her moment. I learned it at 42, standing up to use my position as a school trustee to defend my daughter. And thousands of families across the country learned it through our story, finding their own courage to stand up to their own bullies. That's the real graduation gift, not a diploma or an award, but the knowledge that we're capable of standing up for what's right when it matters most. That's the gift Patricia Henderson accidentally gave us, even as she tried to tear us down. And that's the gift we'll keep giving to others, for as long as we have voices to speak and power to use. Because that's what love does. It protects. It defends. It stands up. Always.